Wealth, fame, power. Cowboy Bebop had this and everything else the world had to offer, until the day it went 3D. Before Netflix hung it from the gallows, these were the final words it spoke. The good live-action anime exists, but you'll have to find it first. I left everything I learned in one piece.
Netflix's Tomorrow Studios One Piece is the best live-action anime adaptation to come out of a US production company. And it's mid.
The hell?
To be absolutely crystal clear that anyone could take a franchise that works precisely because it's a glorious cartoon action fantasy melodrama with pirates and turn around something not only watchable, but genuinely entertaining, at times, is a monumental feat. Grinch lifting the sled shit. My heart grew 3 sizes the day Rubber Monkey headbutt a cat butler out the window. Now the manga and anime seas are treacherous, abound with slop and sister love. Eiichiro Oda's One Piece has octagonal edges, negative and wonderfully absurd to sand down before it can fit through the round hole where the mythical average viewer dwells. We're not here today to ask why One Piece was adapted for live action. Money's the answer. We're here to ask, is this your king?
Is LA One Piece the herald of the golden age of live-action anime? Maybe. But that doesn't make it any less of a mixed bag. The forced scene progression, the sometimes stiff acting, and the decisions on and surrounding cut content, there is a treasure here in my opinion. Or at least a treasure map. But I feel like a shonen teacher saying, "You could be so much more!" We are genuinely really torn on this show, and can't unsee the holes in the boat the collective internet seems to miss for the horizon.
Or maybe we're just scurvy manga fans. Honesty's the best policy, no? We're live action Johnny and Yosaku,
And let us tell you about live action One Piece. We're going to take the soft-hand approach to start. Here's what Tomorrow Studios got right.
The casting team deserves all the treasures of the sea. Iñaki Godoy is an incredible find for the future Pirate King.
It's Chopper! Chopper!
He walks a paper-thin line between cartoon and person. That endearing fusion of max charisma and no intelligence. All heart, no social skills. Whether this series sinks or swims, the kid's got a bright future ahead, no doubt. The Straw Hats have an effortless chemistry. Their interactions are far and away the series' highlight, and when it comes to Shonen Jump material, if you get that right, you are gold.
Ta-da!
Makenyu leans heavy on stoicism and sarcasm. Taz Skylar's Sanji is suave and funny. He and Craig Fairbass's Zeph are a perfect match for the bickering found family. Emily Rudd gets the job done, bearing most of the emotional weight of the season, even if I'm not crazy about how Nami's mercenary nature has been toned down. Jacob Romero's Usopp has casual charm and nails the lying interjections. Stephen John Ward and Andre LaRue are living, breathing anime characters. Aiden Scott's Helme.
Ooh.
What a joy. What a treat. Such a lovable asshat.
There is no doubt that the source material was heavily referenced by the actors. This shines through in short interactions that tell you more about the character than the story does.
I'm tired of hearing about Nami from other people.
She told you to leave, Luffy.
So did you.
Tomorrow Studios was supposedly using Scott Pilgrim vs. the World as the quote, tonal touchstone. It's a solid target. I don't know that they hit it. The show could stand to be zanier, in my opinion. But once you hear that's what they were aiming for, you can't unsee it.
Just killing some time.
Grandpa? Grandpa?
The show's far more grounded than the manga and anime, yet maintains some of the eccentricities that make One Piece such an enjoyable adventure. There's an easygoing fun to be had throughout.
In different forms of media, there's going to be different ways of expressing the story. The manga and anime have both leaned into their established strengths. Live-action anime hasn't found its strengths yet. But I think that the One Piece live-action did unlock a sunken treasure chest with the human element. The bickering in the crew feels authentic. Their chemistry as performers is legit.
You guys are the worst.
It's thanks to moments like these that the characters don't come off as paper thin. They have some depth and life to them. Zoro's decision to join the crew is harder for him, drawn out more in the live action to show the progression of his attitude to becoming a pirate, and lightening up.
You're a crew.
Nope, not a crew.
Together.
The choice was made to show Luffy's backstory in parts to line up with a decision he's making in present time. This provides the character of Luffy a sense of having lived in this world, and that the things that happen are processed by his character. I've always thought Luffy's stretchy rubber body was cool. So much so, in fact, that I never really got why characters were freaked out with him. Seeing it happen to a real-life person made me understand in an instant why people see Luffy as a freaky rubber boy in a world of devil fruits.
The show is generally good at realizing some of the stranger fantasy elements and Oda's art style. Outfits are a little costumey, but they are accurate. The manga and anime already had a lot of fun laughing at its own oddities, so it was nice to see the series doesn't roll its eyes at everything else. Nobody ever picks up a Den Den Mushi and goes, "What's this, a snail phone?" The production design overall is a highlight. A staggering amount of the sets and props are practical. 85% of what we see on screen is in camera, according to an estimate by Tomorrow Studios president Becky Clements.
Looking at how the extensive use of CGI backgrounds was poorly received in the recent Avatar adaptation, I bet those crews are feeling vindicated, and they should.
Buggy's high top, Kaya's eclectic mansion, Arlong Park, the boats, exaggerated life abounds. Too much sometimes.
What is this AI Captain Morgan poster? For a highlight, how about the Baratier? Look at this dang ship. If I saw this in real life sailing, I'd believe I'm in a pirate world. They even have the penguin pirates in Kaya's mansion. They did that for me!
There's more worthy of praise, like the sound design and some of the fights, but that's not the agenda today. Put on your tricorns and unfurl the jogger's ralgy. It's bad pirate time. Realizing One Piece's core fantasy of superpowered piracy cannot have been easy. That doesn't change how often I was sucked out of the experience by often tiny but not insignificant decisions and less than stellar execution. You can take these with a grain of salt of a size inversely proportional to our careers working in television, but to these eyes, there are numerous tells of compromise. There's a lot of blocky staging, a lot of standing around, a lot of strange moments the edit lingers on. To me, this smells of either weak direction or airtight shooting schedules for budget. I feel like a lot of the cast has potential that could be worked out through directors with stronger vision, but that's not always how directors get to work in television. Again, being crystal here, I'm speculating on the workings of the sausage factory. Critiques are reserved for the sausage. First and foremost, Jacob Romero's Usopp. For scenes that require the actors to get to a higher emotional place, the guy looks lost, unable to find the extremes we should be seeing from this era of One Piece's most verbose crew member. It doesn't help that the adaptation of his storyline is awful. He has some bright spots like the dream ceremony at the end of the season.
I'm gonna become a brave warrior of the sea!
In that moment, his potential is clear. But otherwise, dude looks uncomfortable more than he looks scared.
It's okay to be jealous. Feel what you need to feel. This is stupid.
Makenyu's Zoro gives detached badass, too cool for this shit. Some might think that's a perfect Zoro, but I think he leans into it a bit too hard. He's latched onto this business where he barely looks people in the eyes, and when he does, it's always at the end of sentences. He pulls this card a bit too much. And I think they let Godoy run a little bit too long on some takes. Like, there's some moments where he looks like he's going through 7 stages of realizations, and I wish someone on set had told him to pick up the pace. Why is so much of this shot with wide-angle lenses? So many unflattering close-ups. It's really apparent on Mihawk, whose menace is undercut by some really obvious contact lenses. The level of distortion and shallow depth of field these lenses apply are used in ill-fitting situations, in my opinion. The generous interpretation, and likely intended vision, was to mirror Oda's incredible use of foreshortening in the manga. Oda's a wizard at composition, creating dynamic panels by distorting the proportions of people and space to emphasize details and action. So it's possible that's what they were going for, but it's not a great look. I start to wonder if maybe these lenses were leaned into to save time, fit as many people into a single shot as possible, and you can get your coverage with less cameras. Or maybe the shallow focus was to disguise seams in the sets and backgrounds. The overuse of these wide lenses ironically gives me claustrophobia, people in spaces stretched to the brim to fill frames. Speaking of, the show makes sure to use its incredible production design to the fullest, but it leads to some eyebrow raisers. Is this supposed to be a different hallway each time in Kaya's mansion? It looks like production used the same space, but implied it was elsewhere in the manor, and if I have to dig through footage to determine that, something's not clear. Also, Buggy's tent is established to be in Orangetown, but after Luffy blasts him away and frees the town, he just comes back? Is this a new tent? Did the townspeople leave? Why wasn't the tent part of his ship? And this is just plain and simple weird. When Luffy first sees the Going Merry, we only get a look at the figurehead and railing till they sail away at the end of the storyline. Maybe they wanted to save it for that big moment, but it's bizarre to lavish this much import on something we don't fully see. Worse, Usopp hangs over the side, giving car salesman, and it's like, you could have walked around the set you built.
As much as I appreciate the restraint to not weed in the dialogue, there seems to be little faith in the audience keeping up. There are so many moments that run past the point where you already understand what's going on. Take this line, for example.
And what's with the third sword? I mean, where does it even go?
This is set up to a later moment where it's revealed that Zoro fights with a sword in his mouth. And what does Luffy do?
So that's where it goes.
He has this face of realization, and that's where it should have ended, but he just had to go.
That's where it goes.
Godoy is good with making these big faces. Just let him do the work through acting.
If you're opposed to assessing LA One Piece on anything but its own terms, well, you probably checked out a while ago, but it's only dark clouds ahead. The first season adapts nearly 100 chapters of manga, or roughly 25 hours of animation, down to 8 hours of film. The writing team's mountain to scale was determining what to leave out. No easy task, and we believe they made some choices.
One Piece storylines ballooned from a few chapters to tens of books in length. Future live-action seasons could encompass one story that played out over years of manga publication, but East Blue consists of shorter, self-contained stories that are in a tricky spot lengthwise. Adapting all their original content, Kreatev and Arlong Park could be a full season, though for various reasons, that would probably suck. As a production company, you can't guarantee you're going to have your actors and funding for the next 2 decades. Even if you do, you can't stop these kids from aging, and unfortunately, the Straw Hat's youth is an essential narrative component. The One Piece manga began nearly 30 years ago, but from 1997 to 2024, maybe 3 years have passed in universe? Feel free to debate this in the comments, we'd love the engagement.
There are things that could be cut for time and flow. The point past where fights have any narrative weight, enemies describing their abilities, the endless recaps and chorus reactions to fill time.
Oh no! Get out of there! He got hit! He's done. Poor guy.
There's this weird moment near the end of Arlong Park where it punctuates this emotional beat by having everyone look at the building for more than half a minute. And if you think that's bad, wait a couple of years and that happens twice per episode, at least. Stripped of its fluff, One Piece is still a titanic narrative in a fantastical world you need time and substantial capital to realize. You cannot achieve its verisimilitude, its moment-to-moment quintessential cartooniness without big spending. A recent estimate from Quartz said the production had a budget of about $18 million per episode. That's $144 for the season. We're not going to pretend to understand budgeting on something of this scale, and we're in no way criticizing this amount. As far as we can tell, $18 million is huge for a single hour-long episode, and the total production budget is just below some of the most expensive series of all time. But as a reference point, $144 million is less than almost every Marvel movie for a product quadruple the length. Tomorrow's studios had to pick and choose their battles, literally. Voice actors can probably knock out several episodes of an anime in a handful of low-billed hours. A few underpaid animators recycling music and sound effects from decades ago can render an epic battle where armadas are torn asunder. One artist and a few assistants can do the same with ink, paper, and a computer on a weekly basis. But in live action, you have to commit serious time, money, and personnel just to ask the question of what the hell do we do about the reindeer?
Reverse engineering from the end product, the strategy for this season appears to have been stripping the location-specific storylines all of fat, and stuffing as many character beats as possible in an overarching story of the crew coming together. Baratier is where this tactic manifests best. Mihawk killing Don Krieg eliminates generously 60% of the arc's content. It frees up time to focus on Zoro and Mihawk and build Nami's relationship with the crew while retaining enough real estate for Sanji and his backstory. Then Arlong is brought in to transition to the next storyline and fill some of the conflict void left with Krieg's removal. If their chief aim was to trim the fat, this was a fine solution, but as we'll detail, live action has a table spilling over with delicious fat. Just in this arc, the absence of the Krieg pirates has the consequence of losing Gin as a key player.
Sanji and Gin have a fraught relationship, friends under different circumstances, but enemies by their loyalty to their troubled captains. Sanji feeding Gin is the climax of an episode's worth of build-up to that moment. It's cathartic, it feels monumental. Feeding a starving pirate who threatened his restaurant and customers is our first glimpse at Sanji's soul.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I thought it was over. I truly thought I was going to die. This food, it's delicious. I've never eaten food this good before. Of course it is.
These are the kinds of treasures LA One Piece jettisoned to fit the broad strokes plot on its tiny boat. We can't watch this moment go by in a flash and not see live action as a shadow of the masterwork. Kobe and Helmeppo should have disappeared after episode 1. If we forget Garp's character assassination, in some ways what Kobe and Helmeppo get up to is more interesting than the 2 episodes very loosely adapted from the anime, and the show netted a really good Helmeppo. But you gotta understand, live action viewers, so much of the soul of each arc is missing in live action, so we can't look at the Marines as anything but an imposition.
Give the Marines their time, but not the pirates' time. The drama between Zeph and Garp was interesting, but it cut into bad times in Kokoyashi Village. This is an adventure, not the West Wing. Stick to the treasure hunt.
What's worse is the implication that this approach is going to be what we see next season with Smoker. For those who don't know, the guy who burns Luffy's poster is a Marine captain who ate the smoke fruit. Presumably he changed his name after. Smoker and his lieutenant Tashigi fill the role Garp and his cadets played in the first season, endlessly and fruitlessly pursuing the Straw Hats. After the arc they're introduced, we see them occasionally learning what the Straw Hats are up to, and they play an important role at the end of the battle with Baroque Works, the next big bads. If they give the minutes paid to Kobe and the gang to Smoker's ship, I worry we're going to lose more of the good stuff coming up.
On the structural side, why is Zoro's backstory in Syrup Village? Zoro, inspired by watching The Dark Knight Rises, attempts to climb out of a well. Apparently this was such a life-threatening moment to him, Zoro, that the past just came flooding back to him. I liked what they did with Zoro's backstory, but the timing of it was weak. I would have rather him just be sleeping and thinking about his backstory. At least that would have felt more in character. Or since Baratier's storyline was changed to center around Mihawk, have Zoro's backstory then when it's relevant to what he's going through. His fight with Bucci and Sham is framed like he's picking himself back up after his dream-threatening defeat. And you can see that being so much more meaningfully paired against his goal, Mihawk. Also, the hell didn't Kuro just kill him? Why did they throw his body and Zoro's swords in a well right in front of the manor?
While we're nitpicking, Captain Morgan says the penalty for assaulting a Marine is 7 days in the yard right after he says Zoro assaulted 4 Marines. So shouldn't it be a month in the yard, which coincidentally is what the punishment was in the original? How does Luffy know what Kuro's plan was when he was unconscious while they were talking about it? Why does Arlong need a map to the Grand Line? He's from there. Alright, we gotta go through this piece by piece. This section could have been the whole video, positive and negative, but that's what wikis are for. Baratier and Arlong Park are mostly good, weaker than the originals, yes, and we have some big bugbears, but not going to spend too much time on those. Let's take it from the top.
Romance Dawn was a rough start. First we have the Nords execute Roger, and the head Nord was Garp of all people. Luffy's arrival to the world of pirates is disorienting. I had a hard time following the scene due to the lighting and location of Kobe's and Luffy's meeting. It doesn't feel like the arrival of our pirate Nakama, but instead a creep following you down an alley. Zoro, not wanting to make a mess in Shanks' fashion, decides to endearingly eat up the floor food and trash Helmeppo. This is some odd attempt of fusion for the yard scene where he eats the dirt rice ball, and the Luffy punching Helmeppo scene, and it just falls flat.
This is such a downgrade. In the original, Helmeppo and Morgan were vicious oppressors. Everyone in town was afraid of them. Helmeppo threatened to execute this girl, took a step down, ordered her to be thrown over a wall, and the Marine did it! Morgan is a crazy murder man who axes his own men on the regular.
Every Marine that just spouted weakness, pull your gun out and shoot yourself! I can't do anything with weak soldiers!
All of this causes a crisis for Kobe, where he has to grapple with what being a Marine is. When he says, oh, there are bad Marines, it feels so flat in live action. This crisis that Kobe has leads him to freeing Zoro. In live action, he meaninglessly stops the guy who has been thoroughly established as no threat. Even though he wants to be a Marine so bad, he helps to do the right thing, with good pirates in front of bad Marines. What the manga did in a couple of chapters, live action couldn't manage in a whole season. It's such a bummer.
It felt like nothing happened in Norgetown. The crew stumble into Dennis Reynolds in makeup and they all get captured. At first thought, it may seem like the exclusion of Mayor Poodle and Choo Choo makes sense. Does it though?
This storyline was originally about the definition of treasure. Nami and Buggy think money is treasure. They couldn't imagine a straw hat being of any value. Luffy's treasures are connections.
I want you to bring this hat back to me someday, in good condition. And only once you've become a great pirate. That's our promise, Luffy.
A little dog who defends his dead owner's pet food shop. A mayor who fights against Buggy's crew who stole the community he and his people built. Seeing their zeal is what motivates Luffy to defeat Buggy, and also proves to Nami he isn't her vision of a pirate, just like Kobe. In LA, we have this weak-sauce attempt to put doubt in Shanks' love for Luffy, which only works if you have never seen One Piece. Luffy would never buy Buggy's taunts, and sure enough in live action he doesn't, so this feels like such a waste. I get the impression this was to better connect Luffy's backstory to the arc, but I think it would have worked perfectly fine without dumping the good theming and rendering the Orangetown people into props.
Because the people matter. Luffy doesn't pity anyone. Luffy doesn't take pity. This is a fact, a principle he lives by. When he takes action, it's because someone made him do it through their own strength and dreams.
This show's greatest failure as an adaptation. All the myriad characters whose hopes and conflicts inspire Luffy to action are largely gone. The live-action versions of these moments of earned respect are so much more tame than the frequent iconic deliveries of the original.
Syrup Village is the rump of this thing. When Captain Kuro exposits that he's killed loads of his own crew, I booed out loud.
I've killed more crewmates than I care to remember. They're expendable. Every single one of them.
Oh, you mean that thing he demonstrated by attacking his crew? The thing that made Luffy not want to just stop his plan, but defeat the man?
Don't you have any honor? Those men are your friends!
Bucci and Sham are right there, and they're actual people in this version. Why not demonstrate his philosophy through attempting crew murder? No one was done dirtier in adaptation than Usopp. He does some lying, he does some running, he fires a singular shot at Captain Kuro. But he just can't seem to buy his own lie of being Captain Usopp. It probably doesn't help that he doesn't have a pirate crew in this village to back him up. Before, the marksman had to step in the way of battle and earn his bravery and the respect of his future crewmates and friends. Now, there's no reason for really anyone to like him, except for Kaya.
Over in 3D, Usopp brings the Marines to stop Kuro, which you think would be a tough pill to swallow for a man proud of his pirate father, but not gonna address that. After Kobe contributes absolutely nothing, Usopp endeavors to do the same. Sorry, your character arc had to make room for Zoro's backstory. God, they could have saved this for season 2. A strong theme of bravery and friendship was excised, so Kobe could be here, be told to leave, and he didn't even come back to pick up the actual villain. Usopp helps Kaya run away and fires one shot. That's why he's here. That's why he's part of the team now. The man's a goddamn hero in the original. This is so weak.
I don't buy that Usopp deserves a spot on this crew. Maybe they plan to lean into that more later on, but it certainly wasn't set up well if that's the case.
Baratier is probably the best live-action arc. It dumped East Blue's weakest villain, Sanji and Zeph's relationship is great cinema, everything with Mihawk is solid, Nami and Zoro's drinking game, great addition. This line from Nami,
If you fight him tomorrow, you're going to lose.
Why do you even give a shit?
Because you're my friend, you idiot.
incredible. Tear to my eye, seriously.
But who in the heck is buying that Garp in his secret plot to test Luffy would send a warlord to capture him at any cost? You're telling me Garp thinks Luffy will give up and become a Marine if Mihawk diced his crew to capture him?
I know Arlong Park hit for a lot of people. The fights are fun, despite Garp coming in and undercutting it for a while with the worst fight in the show. But so much great material is missing, man. The original was rife with tense moments wherein trying to help Nami, the Straw Hats make things more difficult from her perspective. She has to continually risk her working alliance with Arlong to keep them alive.
What do you think you're doing?
You're really just a nice girl that can't watch one guy die. Why don't you quit pretending?
Yet another moment of Usopp's bravery is left unadapted.
This is what happens to those who defy me!
Captain! Usopp!
My personal bugbear, Luffy learning Nami's backstory. I get what they're going for. Luffy pursuing all ends to figure out what Nami is going through is very much in character, but it's so... In the original, Nojiko asks, "Hey, would you like to hear Nami's backstory?" And he leaves.
Where are you going, Luffy?
For a walk.
A walk? Do you mean you're not gonna listen to this?
Nope.
Because all that mattered to him was whether or not Nami needed help. When Nami says, "You don't know what's going on here, you don't know anything about this situation," and Luffy says, "I don't." Oh, it hits, man. It's so, like in the original, he really doesn't.
You don't know anything about what's going on here.
I don't.
Yeah, you do. You know exactly what's going on.
First, we really need to know about Nami.
The truth is...
Do you mean that you can tell us why she joined up with Arlong's group?
Yeah?
So tell us all about it.
I'll pass.
Hey,
The big moment, perhaps One Piece's pinnacle, is so close and yet so far. Luffy genuinely didn't know anything about what was happening and helped anyway because he could always see right through Nami. He didn't need to know the situation with Arlong. All he needed to hear was Nami ask for help, and he would fucking level that place.
Let's go.
Right.
Luffy, help me. Nami! You'll always be my friend!
You wanna know what bums me out?
What?
How the whole reason for Garp and the Marine story is to try and convince the audience that Luffy and the crew earned their way into the Grand Line. What sort of test is one cannonball and being trailed behind the entire season? Are we supposed to think that Luffy's real challenges weren't the ideals and strengths of the piss pirates he faced, but instead because his laugh reminded Garp of Roger? The Mad Dog of the Sea is clinically insane. He's bonkers. Oh!
The music sucks ass. Banana ass music. Banana. Elephant trombone sounding. The anime uses the same 5 tracks 100 times per arc, and it's better than this.
Where the hell is Hachi? Where the hell is Momu?
Oregano's for savages.
Bro, what? Yeah, what the fuck is that? What the fuck?
Needs oregano.
Oregano's for savages!
He says it twice! Like, he wants to find All Blue to come up with new recipes, so why would he take oregano and be like, oh, excluded? He's, like, really limiting himself by getting rid of anything.
For some, Netflix One Piece proved good live-action anime can not only exist, but thrive, and it did so by playing the game on nightmare difficulty. I went into this video excited to express my alternative takes to further the conversation, but now, honestly, I feel like a spoil sport. Oh, the cartoon worked better as a cartoon. Great insight, Fuzz Punch.
The show isn't bad, and that feels like a game changer. They got one thing absolutely right, and that's the Straw Hats as human beings. Hard not to smile along with this crew.
We acknowledge our grievances are raining on the parade, but we're sticking firmly to our beliefs that just because the bar is low doesn't mean this is amazing, and there are problems on display this season that spell trouble ahead. But neither of us are looking to ruin your time. There's magic in these waters that's enchanted a whole lot of people. Maybe we're too salty to be spellbound. Honesty, right?
From where we're sitting, an expert navigator is going to be needed for the Grand Line and into the New World. Can Tomorrow Studios do it? Shit, I hope so. Because it's only gonna get harder from here. Have a happy.